Hey everybody, Hellcrex here, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts from the Inner Sphere. And today we're going to be talking about those slow-moving medium mechs, and there's a couple light mechs that are slow in there that basically is kind of like your Anvil and Anvil types mechs. In the medium class, they come in fairly cheap when it comes to points, and they're slow. We're talking 464, and there's even a 3-5 mover in there. But they can't be used as flankers because they're just too slow. They can't be used as scouts because, well, they're too slow. But what they bring to the table is more firepower. The one that comes to mind the most often to me when I think of somebody that can be used for just hammering somebody, which is the gambling mech, the Hunchback. Yes, the Hunchback. It is one of those mechs that carries around this big giant autocannon. It's slow moving, attracts a lot of attention. You gotta hide or take it down before it gets to deliver that massive pill package. And it can sort of strike a little bit of terror into mechs that see it coming, because oh my gosh, if I'm a medium or light mech and I see something carrying around an AC-20, and I'm like, okay, that's one shot can punch through all my armor and get into my juicy bits. So, you have to figure something out there. Now, these mechs, which are, we'll just get that list out there, is the Urban Mech, okay? Yeah, it's a Urban Mech, good for shooting it up, very cheap, comes great in an urban environment. Put it out in an open field, it's like, oh, that's dead. Then there's the Panther. The Panther is an interesting kind of fire support slash sort of up close in your face type of mech, but it's a light mech. It's a 464, slow. Then we have the Whitworth, is kind of as we talked about, it's kind of a cheap man's fire support mech. We got the Blackjack, which is kind of a cheap man's anti-aircraft slash support mech slash in your face mech, depending on which version you run with. Then we have the Hatchet Man, which is once again a great urban combat type mech. And then we have the Vindicator, which can be used as a fire support, kind of up close, be used in any type of urban combat. It's not a bad mech. Then there's a Centurion Enforcer, depending on the area you're in and which version you're running. Those can be slow. They got some good firepower with them. They're not fast by any means, unless you get the ones with the XL engines, which we talked about in the previous one. And then we already talked about the Hunchback, and then we got that big old slow-moving hoplite with a big autocannon on it. So we have all these mechs. They're all 464s or 460s. Some don't have jump jets. Some do. They kind of shine their best in a lot of cases. Like I said, some of them are pretty decent as a fire support mech, medium range mech, because a lot of these mechs are carrying around either large lasers or an AC-10 or an autocannon or a PPC. They have something that's going to do 8, 10, or even 20 points of damage. So they're kind of like the Anvil. They're slow moving. Now, we've talked about the flankers and the scouts. Those are going to be like your hammers in a way, because these guys would be the ones that are out on the flank, maneuvering, trying to attract the attention, while these guys are coming up, slowly moving up, plodding along. Initially, they're using the long-range fire, maybe get a hit or two in there once in a great while. Odds are they're probably not. In my experience, is most of these mechs don't do much damage out at long range. It's when they start getting into the medium range and short range, that's when they start, doing their job. And while they're doing that, you have your flankers and your scouts are out there maneuvering around, attracting attention, keeping the eye on them, because they're the ones that are, well, let's just say the fire and forget type weapon out there. They're moving around. They're not necessarily trying to do a lot of damage, but these guys are sitting there, plodding along, And then, it's like, oh, I just connected with a PPC. Yay, I did 10 points. It's kind of minuscule, but it's continually doing the job. It's then when you get into that medium range and short range game, this is where you start seeing these guys start doing their work. This is, if you ever played the Succession War style mechs, this is what you're going to be facing a lot of times when it comes to medium mechs with, other than your flankers and your scouts that are kind of maneuvering around, being a pain in the backside. So, when you get into that medium range, then you're starting to see where, okay, it's kind of like a pyramid scheme here, where at the very top is the long range. You're doing a little bit of damage, hardly noticeable. And when you start getting that medium range, okay, it's like, this is where the game sort of changes. I've always found is that suddenly, oh, you guys are doing more damage to me. You are more of a threat, so I have to take you out or face you, or else I'm going to have problems. Which gives your flankers that opportunity now to start maneuvering around the backside and doing damage that direction, or finding those open flanks that, they may have been opened up a can on somebody and say, hey, we got the can partially open, there's an open spot right there, and then they'll start just trying to funnel damage down into a flank or a rear flank. And there's nothing more that cause somebody to start spinning in different directions trying to figure out how to protect themselves when you have forces in two different directions. You have, oh, I'm shooting in your rear and I'm shooting in the front. Who do you wish to face next turn? Are you going to force them to maneuver so to protect themselves while these guys are moving up? Now, when they get into the front, right up there in the short range, most of them have some good firepower. This is where you start seeing like the hunchbacks, or that's my favorite is the swayback. Nothing more terrorizing than, say, somebody show up with 8 medium lasers and unleash on you and just rip armor off that's already been ripped off, possibly already. He's not very fast, but it does a lot of damage. So you have to, it's like psychological warfare. I always like psyops. We had a psyops, bunch of guys that were psyops in some of the units I was in, and were trained in it. And they talk about all the tactics of trying to mess with people's heads. And it's kind of like goes back to the days of taking all those psychology classes where you learn human nature. If you know what human nature in general is, their lizard brain, you can start manipulating the lizard brain into making them do what you want them to do. And one of those is survival. And if you start doing a lot of damage, they're going to try to figure out how to survive the longest. And maybe that's how you can turn a flank and then start just hammering, peeling them back. And I've always looked at it, it's like, okay, you figure out what is the best target for these guys, and then they just focus on them. It's focus fire, focus fire, focus fire. You hit one mech and you just tear it to pieces and then move on to the next one. A lot of players will say, oh, I'm going to shoot over here, I'm going to shoot over here, I'm going to take this guy, and then it's kind of like whittle each other down like 1,000 paper cuts. I always look at it, it's like, I'm going to strike terror into your brain housing group by just hammering one target and try to eliminate it. And then suddenly, if you eliminate targets and they're only doing damage to you in a broad sense, you're winning the game, because suddenly you just took out a mech. That's one less initiative pip that they have, and that's less firepower coming your direction, and it starts compounding. If you take a second mech out without losing one, and then that compounds more. And we go back to one of those really old videos I put out where the rolling attack, what I always like to call it, is that you have somebody at the tip of the spear to start getting damage, you move them back and move somebody up forward that might be a better, juicier target. Yes, they may want to kill the target that's been damaged pretty hard, but then you will say, okay, go ahead. You can shoot at the guy that's way back. You have maybe a less chance to hit them, and you're totally ignoring the guys that are focus firing you from close range. So what are you going to do? So you give yourself some options, and then you look at it, and they're going, oh man, it's like, I'm not sure what to do. You know, constantly putting the pressure on somebody. And also you have to look at the terrain, how to maneuver your flanking forces and your light forces to get in and protect them also, so they're not a target they're willing to shoot at. Because there's nothing worse than having a light mech that doesn't hardly any move itself because, oh, I want to be right here. It's like, well, is it necessarily the best place for you? Because yeah, you may get, say, I move into this light woods and only have a 3 mod, or you could jump this far distance and get a 4 mod, or you can jump into these woods and get a 5 or 6 mod. So yeah, you have to look at, am I able to do a little bit less damage, protect my mechs? And there's also, just because a mech isn't doing a lot of damage doesn't mean that you're not psychologically affecting somebody, because there's nothing worse than seeing something jump into your backfield, into your rear. It's like, oh, I don't like getting ganked in the back. You know, it may be the fact that this mech may not do a lot of damage, but if you continually sitting in their rear arc, moving around all the time, eventually you may punch a hole through and start doing some work on the other side, and one of their torsos, you know, be left, right, or center. And there have been many times it's like, okay, yeah, it hits an arm or it hits a leg, but that adds up too. So you have to look at that. So you get these medium mechs that are so slow in some game terms. You know, you'll face against the clans. Typical clan mech is a 5'8", 6'9", or even a 7'11", Slurpee style. So compared to, yeah, they're slow, but when it comes to Inner Sphere, most of these guys can easily become zombie mechs because, you know, they don't have the XL engines in them. They're basically still based on the old Succession War style, unless they've been given those XL engines, which, you know, it's like, in most cases I look at it, yeah, you don't necessarily need them. And especially on, it's kind of, to me, putting an XL engine that's still a 4.6 or 4.64 is a major waste of, you know, of an engine. If you're going to put an XL engine on it, leave it on the lights or the very fast light or medium mechs, where, you know, yeah, you're going to pump up their speed to probably a 7 or an 8. So that will even protect them even more. So they're probably a 7-11 or an 8-12 style light or XL engine type of mech. So there you go. Now, the other thing, like I've said before, is you have to look at combination of weapon systems. I always look at it as like, okay, what's the environment I might be facing off in? If it's a city fight, I'll probably look more towards like your hunchbacks and those type of mechs that, yeah, the ranges are probably going to be medium or short to begin with before you can even fire anything, unless it's like LRMs or something of that nature. Now, if it's a pretty open field, a game that you know that you're coming up, yeah, I'm probably going to be looking at something that's going to be shooting a little bit longer, something that comes with a PPC. Hey, never underestimate those Panthers, because many games, individuals will take Panthers into the game. Yeah, they have a PPC, maybe a standard, but they can maneuver pretty good and still fire that PPC and do some good damage with it. Now, you look at the Enforcers and the Centurions and the Vindicators. Vindicators are a great option to take in, throw into a lance. So typically, if you're just going to look at these medium mechs that you have in that one Panther, kind of throw the urban out. It's kind of a one of those ones that situational dictates where, yeah, if you're the urban combat, yeah, you might look at bringing in an urban mech. But the use of a Whitworth as your fire support mech, the Vindicator does have that LRM, so it can do some indirect fire. So you may want to grab one mech out of your flanker department, or your even a light mech for your eyes and ears for these mechs where they're moving along. So a Whitworth, a Vindicator, maybe an Enforcer. Centurion's not a bad option because it has the LRM. And so you have some options for doing indirect LRM fire. So, and that's pretty much it. So you got to look at what you want, where you want to go with it, and you can't go wrong really, and depending on the era, but especially if you're fighting the succession wars, these are going to be your meat and potato type mechs, because a lot of times you're not going to have access to too many heavy mechs, and most of the time those are going to be your T-bolts, Crusaders, not Enforcers, but probably a Catapult or an Archer or something of that nature. Then, if that's the case, most of your work is going to be done with these mechs. Most of your lineup will probably be something of this nature. And that's been my experience over the years, is that you're looking at, okay, I got so much battle value, I want to bring enough mechs to field. Yeah, you're going to be looking at pulling in some of these mechs to fill out the force. But that's pretty much it when it comes to these medium mechs. They're not fast by any means, and later on, if you're facing clans, they're probably going to die in droves, but, you know, it's like you have a bunch of them, and a bunch of these type of mechs can beat the clans. You know, you just have to bring a lot of them. You just be willing to, yep, there's going to be some sacrifices made for the greater good of the inner sphere, but we can take these guys down and have a few fall on the grenades while the rest go forward and slaughter the heathens from the outside of our inner sphere. But that's it. Hope you guys like it. Like and subscribe. Share with all your friends. And we'll see you in the next one. Hulk Rex out.